So, hi, hello, it's been a minute. I know I kind of disappeared off Booktube for a while there, but, low-key maybe coming back. So I'm starting with a vlog because that seems like kind of the lowest risk, lowest maintenance thing to do. Hi. What have I read recently? I just finished 2 books in like the past week. One I finished last night at work. I was listening to the audiobook and I got through Neil Gaiman's The View from the Cheap Seats, which is an anthology collection that he has, just a collection of his various writings, everything from speeches he's given to introductions he's written for other books. And I thought it was going to be, I gave it 2 stars. I kind of went into it thinking it was going to be more generalized information, like kind of just like, he gave a speech about libraries, that was kind of like the first piece of the book. And I was like, yeah, this is low-key what I'm expecting, like kind of, writing bookish related things, but also like not super specific. And then it kind of like devolved at a point into like introductions for a lot of books I hadn't read, and like him eulogizing authors that I hadn't heard of. And he gave a great many speeches on like comic books, and like none of these things are bad to include or to write or anything. It's just, I've not read a lot of Neil Gaiman, and I don't read a lot of like speculative weird like sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, like what he writes and what he like reads and would write introductions for, obviously. So it was just like not a whole lot there for me. And I don't know, it was like in general a lot of like very specific knowledge, and I feel like this is the kind of book where either you're just like the most hardcore Gaiman fan and you'll probably love it, or like you really do need to like skip through and just like skip the things like, oh hey, an introduction for a book that I've never heard of, maybe I should just skip this. And I listen to everything. And yeah, so that's not so much like an indictment on the book as it is just like my experience with the book, which is fine. And I also I low-key kind of find Neil Gaiman a little bit irritating. Like, not like hugely so. And it's not like he says anything that I like disagree with. It's just kind of sometimes his attitude or like the way he phrases things just kind of like rubs me the wrong way a little bit. Like, it's just kind of like, ooh, I find that a little bit annoying. And I don't know. It was... Getting through that book was kind of a lot. I probably should have DNF'd it, and I almost did. But I just decided to keep listening anyway, and yeah. But I did finish it, so huzzah. I listened to another audiobook, but I can't remember what it was. It was about true crime stuff. It's interesting. It would probably help if I, like, remembered what it was, but I don't. And then the other thing that I finished very recently, I finished this a couple days ago, was... I was about to say The Time Traveler's Wife, Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. This is a horror book. I think it's horror. It's like, I don't know. I'd say like more supernatural contemporary than like horror. But I don't know, it was interesting. There are ghosts. I don't really do ghosts most of the time. I think I gave this 3 stars. I think I'm going with 3. I haven't like been on Goodreads in months and months and months, so I'm just making up these ratings. I haven't actually done reviews. This is about girls who are twins and their aunt dies and leaves them everything, so they move to London because that's where their aunt that's where she lived, and they're American, and it's kind of like them living in her apartment for a year and figuring out each other, and they kind of like form a bond with their aunt's former boyfriend. I don't know. Interesting things. I think just like not super my thing. Like it was interesting. I did actually like really enjoy the story and everything. But ghosts, I don't really do like supernatural things very much. So it was interesting to like read something that I ordinarily wouldn't. And I did really enjoy the book, but it didn't really leave me feeling the need to read anything else by her. So I probably won't. And also there was a point where it becomes very obvious what the ending is going to be, which is fine because I'm fairly decent at like predicting things, so I don't normally judge books for that. But it was the kind of feeling where the last like 150 pages, maybe 200 pages, I don't really remember. There was a good chunk of time where I was just waiting for the ending to happen and kind of just like waiting to see what the characters' reactions were going to be. And I wasn't invested enough in the characters or their lives or their stories to care about what was happening in the interim between when I figured out what was going to happen and when the thing happened. So there was like a period of just like waiting for it to kind of like get interesting again, but I don't know, it wasn't bad, it was good. Like, I would recommend this. Like, if it's, I feel like people would like this if it's just more their kind of thing than it was for me, because this really isn't my kind of thing very much, but it was really interesting. I did really enjoy it. It's just, I don't know, I feel like I need to read something that's just like my kind of thing now. So I think next I'm going to try to pick up Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour, which is honestly also doesn't super sound like my kind of thing, but I love Nina LaCour, and it's a contemporary YA. I think it's like a little bit fluffier than I usually go for, but I do love her so much, so like I'm hoping I enjoy that one. And all I know about it is that I believe it's sapphic romance, which is what Nina LaCour writes a lot of the time, and I really love her stuff. So I'm hoping that one will be like, if not a 5-star read, then at least like something that I really, really love. So I have finished Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. It took me a week and a half or so to get through it, which is probably still a very long time to be reading a YA contemporary, but I am getting a little faster at just like getting through my books again. Super cute. I had no concept of what it was about going in, apart from these two girls fall in love. But basically it's set in Los Angeles between people who work on movies. They're like 18. The main character is like into set design and stuff. She's an intern at a company that her older brother got her the job. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. And she meets an up-and-coming actress who's starring in her first indie film, and they kind of embark on a mystery about the girl's past and fall in love, as you know, people do. And it's cute, like 4 stars. I did really like it, but I do think it's just like, I struggle with books where you know everything's gonna be okay. Like, I don't mind when everything is okay at the end, like that's not my issue. It's kind of when you're reading the book, you're a third of the way in, and you know everything's gonna work out. It loses a little bit of like, I don't know, like suspense or like stakes. Like, it doesn't have high enough stakes for me because you know it's going to be okay, which like it is fine. It was definitely one of those books where like it wouldn't have worked if it hadn't been okay. But it was cute. Like, it's probably like my least favorite of Nina LaCour's books, but it's also the one that's least to my taste. I think it was still like well done, and I did think like it was cute and fluffy, but it also had a little more gravitas than like I would say most very fluffy contemporaries have, because it is Nina LaCour, and it is like, despite its cuteness, it does feel real. It feels like real people, real problems, their real lives. And like, okay, sure, it's gonna have a happy ending, but it feels like realistic rather than like, I don't know, sometimes you read fluffy things and it just seems like everything is like too cute and like too perfect. And this felt real, you know? It felt like real people and real reactions to situations, and just, I don't know, I did like it. So 4 stars. I haven't decided what I'm gonna read next. I ordered myself like 10 books because that's the kind of person I am. So those should be arriving in the next couple of days, and I don't know, I'm a little bit disappointed I didn't like fall in love with this the way I did with Everything Leads to You. Just not Everything Leads to You, that was this book. We Are Okay, because that book is just like stunningly beautiful. But this was really good too, and I don't know, I just think Nina LaCour is like a masterful writer, and everything she writes, regardless of what it's about, or like the plot or the story or the characters, it's just like great because of her writing style. And I don't know, she'll always be a favorite to me, I think. But yeah, I'll probably go for something a little bit heavier next, just because this was lighter than my taste usually tends towards. So like maybe something that's like a little darker, just to kind of like even it out a bit. But we'll see. I'll probably update like tomorrow or something with what I started. Quick pit stop at the library today. post-work. Apparently I put a book on hold a while back. By a while back, I mean like at least 2 months, potentially significantly more. The Project by Courtney Summers, which is her new release. I'm not sure if it's 2021 or 2020. I do know I've had this on hold since before it came out, and I was like decently back on the hold list, so I am finally getting it. And I did say I was craving something dark, so I have no idea what this is about. I skimmed like the first paragraph of the description, and it seems potentially culty, but also there's a lot of death. Like even in just the first paragraph, they were like, most of her family dies, and that's fun. So I'll be getting to this soon as I finish my current read, which I did start the other day, and now I'm about halfway through, and that is, wrong way around, The Survivors Club by Lisa Gardner. I kind of have been making my way through Lisa Gardner books slowly, not so slowly, the past couple of years. She's a thriller author, like one of those book a year thriller authors who does cop mystery thrillers, and I don't know, I like them. They're okay. They're not like the greatest thing in the world. Like, she's not an author I'm gonna be like hella repping for, because most of her books tend to average around 3 stars for me. Like the older ones tend to be like 2 to 3 stars, and the newer ones tend to be like 3 to 4. But 3 stars is like a pretty solid average for her. But I do enjoy reading them. Like, they're always fine. They're never like bad. And like there's so many cop thrillers I read that are just like painful. And I know her books are never going to be painful. Like, they might not be great, but they're going to be like okay. And that's kind of where I'm at. So this is one of her older ones. It's been on my shelf for a minute, and I don't know, I decided to get to it. It is a man who's arrested for serial rape, and now they're like, oh no, he might not have done it, and then he gets killed. And yeah, they're kind of like looking at the women he raped, the victims who formed like a survivors club together, and like rapes that are currently happening, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's fine. It's probably going to be 3 stars. I'm like halfway through-ish almost. I will say there's one unfortunate moment, like 150 pages in, the main cop was like, this is going to be a long one, guys. And I actively groaned. Like, it's unnecessarily long. This book is like 500 pages long, and it could be like 3 and not lose anything. But it is fine. It is just like enjoyable enough. It's a little bit like slow, and I normally like slow, but it's kind of just like boring, and there's so much going on in this book. Like, there's so many different characters and so many different threads and so many different backstories for all the characters, and I don't know if any of them are recurring characters, because Lisa Gardner usually has like recurring characters, like a main cop, and then like there'll be a series about that cop, and I don't know any of these characters, but I also haven't read all of her older books because they're the ones the library doesn't have. So I want to check and see if this is like a standalone, because there's an awful lot of backstory that seems kind of over the top, but also if it is like part of a series, it's very spoilery for other books. I don't know. There's this whole, like, the main cop, like, had a breakdown 18 months ago when his, like, wife died of cancer, and he arrested his friend for, like, the murders of many small children who he buried in the basement. It was his next door neighbor, and, like, I'm like, that's a lot for a book that is not remotely about that. This is about a serial rapist, like, 2 years later. So, I don't know. It's just kind of like, it could have been pared down a whole lot and probably would have been better for it, but it's still like fun. And also just like that whole backstory sounds like it would be a way more interesting story than this book. So I do want to see if like that was actually a book she wrote, or if that's just like this character's backstory, because like I kind of want to read that book. I am still not quite in the habit of filming regularly, so I do have a couple of updates for y'all at this moment. First of all, I did finish The Survivors Club by Lisa Gardner. 3 stars. I think I talked about this when I was like in the middle of it, and I don't really have much to add. It was fine. The story itself was like a little bit overblown. Like, there were like too many characters with too many melodramatic backstories and too many things going on, and it just like, it could have been simplified and it could have been a lot shorter, but it was still like fun, you know, like it's the kind of book that I'm never gonna think about again, like ever. But like it was a fun ride to go on, and when I'm picking up thrillers like this, like that's kind of all I need from them and all I expect from them. They're not like the greatest thing in the world, they're not going to stick with me very long, but like it was a fun ride. And then I did mention I picked up The Project by Courtney Summers from the library, and I read this. I started it as soon as I finished The Survivors Club, which was like a couple of days ago, and this was 5 stars. So it is good to like realize that I can still have 5-star reads, because this is my first 5-star book since like 2019. So it was really nice to just like return to having good reads, like really amazing reads. Like I don't know, her books are always like a tiny bit slow for me to get into. Just it's like when I read like the first like 30 pages, I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is 5 stars, and then like I read the final 2/3 in like one sitting, and I forget to breathe while I'm reading it because I'm just so like involved in the story, and it's just like I loved it. Her books, I literally read 3 of her books and they've all been 5 stars. So I definitely need to read more of her books because I have a couple of her older ones. But this is, it's YA, but it's kind of YA on the edge of, it would be considered new adult if new adult was a real genre, because I think the main character is like 19, she's living on her own, she has a full-time job, she's done school. Like, it's basically new adult, which I feel like Courtney Summers sort of tends toward now. Sadie was kind of the same way, and Nina LaCour honestly does too, which might be why I gravitate towards both of them as young adult authors, because they're really like more new adult with like older characters who are still like young. They're not like in their 40s. It's, I don't know, it was really good. Basically it's about a cult, like a religious cult, and it's told in 2 perspectives from 2 sisters at 2 different time frames, and you kind of follow both their stories going forward, and it's kind of like a circular story in a way, and it's just like you know where it's going, and it's still just like the ride is so amazing, and I don't know, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. Courtney Summers is wonderful. Like I always just forget to breathe during her books because I'm just so wrapped up in the story and the characters and their lives, and it was wonderful to like have that feeling again. I think like of the 3 books of hers I've read, this has been potentially my least favorite, but like least favorite in the sense of I'm still absolutely in love with this and would highly recommend if you like darker stories about like teenage characters going through hardships. Well, I don't even know if they were teenage the whole time. I think at some point the older sister was like in her 20s when she was telling her side of the story. So like basically not YA at all, but like would highly recommend. I thought it was absolutely wonderful, and I think just in general Courtney Summers is wonderful. All of her books are stunning to me, so we'll be reading more of her in the future for sure. I think this might just solidify her as like, I just gotta say she's one of my favorite authors, because I don't know anyone else I've read where like all of their books are like straight 5 stars for me. So yeah, really love this. And I just finished that like an hour ago. So I haven't started anything new yet, but I did decide what I'm going to start, and that is Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. This is an adult thriller. She's a Canadian author. I read Those Girls by her a couple years ago, and I really disliked it. Like, I don't remember if I gave it 1 or 2 stars, but even if I gave it 2 stars, it was on the lower end, because I just remember really disliking every aspect of that book. Honestly, it might have been a 1-star read. I don't remember, but I was not a fan. I thought it was like dreary, but like in a boring way. Like it was about like kidnapped sisters kind of, and what they went, it was a few years ago, I don't really remember, but I just remember it being like, it was so over the top dark, but at the same time just like really boring and dull and dreary, and like not, I don't know. But I had picked up this book before that. I think I hadn't realized I had another of her books on my shelf when I read that, and I was kind of like, oh no, and just like have been dreading reading this book for years, because, like, I still want to because it sounds interesting, and just because I didn't like the one doesn't mean I won't like this one. But this one was, she wrote this 5 years before, so potentially questionable, but also this was her first book, so maybe she just, like, started her debut with a bang and it's gonna be wonderful. But I kind of felt like it's good to go from, like, a book that I really, really loved and had, like, high expectations for, and it met all of them, basically, because I wanted to give Courtney Summers 5 stars, to something that, like, I'm not stoked for. Because I feel like if I read something else that I, like, expected to be really good and, like, was reaching for 4 stars, I'd wind up being, like, kind of disappointed by it, probably. But if I read this, like, I'm already expecting disappointment. So, A, it's probably going to disappoint me, and B, even if I like it a little bit, I will be pleasantly surprised. So I was kind of like, I'm kind of feeling something easier. Something easy, something dark, and thrillers are kind of my go-to when I'm in that mood. So another thriller, and hopefully this will be better than I expect, but worst case scenario, it at least gets something I was kind of dreading off my shelf. I am about 2/3 of the way done with Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. Yeah, I've made decent progress. Not because it's fun or good or has any positive qualities about it. It's just, like, one of those books that's so bad, I just don't want to stop reading it, because I know the longer it takes me to read, the longer I have to be involved in reading it. So, getting through that, it's rough. It's worse than I expected, which is always lovely, because I did have low expectations, and I was like, well, maybe it'll be, like, fun anyway. No, it's awful. Like, literally 1/3 of this book, every single chapter, there are at least 2 sections of her just monologuing at her therapist. Like, her dialogue to her therapist, nothing else. No description, no response from the therapist, just, like, her monologuing at the therapist for, like, pages and pages and pages in a row, and, like, none of it's relevant, and she's really annoying. And it's not like she's a bad person annoying, she just has a very annoying voice and annoying thoughts, and, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, she spends so much time talking about, like, how her daughter died and how traumatizing, and how much she's still grieving that, and, like, I get that, but as soon as she stops talking about it, like, the second she stops literally mentioning it, like, stops having any impact on her character or her motivations. Like, it's only when she's actually talking about these things that they actually exist, you know? Like, there's nothing, like, behind the scenes or, like, below the surface. It's just like, well, she's talking about this bad thing, or this bad thing basically never happened. And it's very, I hate it so much. This is either going to be 1 or 2 stars. We'll see how it ends, and if it has an okay ending, I might give it 2 stars, but, like, it's rough. I'll probably finish that today just to, like, be done with it. And I had forgotten to talk about my audiobooks. I sort of tend to forget that they're reading as well, and I listen to them at work. I read Calpyso by David Sedaris, another one of his memoirs. At 3 stars, it was fine. I like David Sedaris, but I only find him funny, like, 1/3 of the time, and I find him annoying, like, most of the time. But the 1/3 of the time that I do find him funny, he's very funny, and he can make me laugh, and, like, I'm entertained by his stories. It's just, like, sometimes he does just come across as very, like, self-absorbed and annoying. So, his books are usually, like, 3 stars for me. But, like, good enough that, and worthwhile enough that I do continue reading them. Like, I just pick them up on occasion, because I know they'll be light, and I know he'll have at least, like, a few entertaining essays in there. And I started listening to Let Me Go by Helga Schneider, which is a memoir of a woman whose mother was a guard at Auschwitz, and basically her mother abandoned her when she was 7, and now she's an adult. I think she's in her 50s or 60s, and she's seen her mother literally twice since then, and it's just, like, about her relationship with her mother. And I'm not very far into that one, but it is interesting. I think next time I have an overnight shift, I'm gonna sit down and, like, actually listen to, like, a big chunk of that and really, like, get involved in that story. But so far it is interesting, but I'm not far enough in to really, like, know anything of too much depth or importance about it. But yeah, I gotta finish this so that it'll be done, and at least it'll be a book off my shelf, and I won't have to think about it or like just cringe whenever I see it, because it'll be gone. Finish this 1 star. I don't have anything more to say about that. Sorry, Gremlin. It was bad. It was rough. I don't like it. I had nothing positive to say about that book. Like, I can't even sit here and pretend that I felt like it had any remotely redeeming qualities, because it did not. So that was a thing that will be leaving my shelf shortly. And then I decided to read something that I actually heard good things about and might be good. So I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch yesterday. Like, I literally sat down yesterday and read this whole thing, and it was good. I gave it 4 stars. I will say it was not mind-blowing. It was kind of the 4 stars where it was like, this book is really good, but it does have flaws. It's just kind of like, it's such an entertaining story, and like, it's well told, and like, just like the storytelling itself, like, it's interesting to follow this guy along this journey, and that kind of made up for some of the flaws. Like, the writing was a little bit much. I think, like, at one point he was like, my wife has an architecturally impossible smile, and like, that's not how we describe things. And there was still a lot like that where it's just like, you don't need to describe things so much, just like, give us a basic description and we can all move on. But it was good. Like, it was really entertaining. Some of like the science or the pseudoscience, I don't know, went like way over my head, and I kind of honestly just skimmed the science bits, but I pretty much always do in books like this, so I don't think that was necessarily like a flaw of the book so much as it is just my personal taste. But I did really like this. I thought it was fun. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like amazing or mind-blowing or anything like that, but it was a really good read, and I'm glad I finally picked it up, and I would wholeheartedly recommend this if you're looking for like a fun thrillery time, because it was very like exciting and drama, and so much was happening, and a little too fast. Like, it could have slowed down some, but I just like everything at an excruciatingly slow pace. So that was good. Might have had a 1 star, but it was preceded by a 5 and followed by a 4. So I'd say that more than evens out. And then I just went to the library. I just got home, and I picked up another library book that I'd had on hold for a very long time. I pretty much only put like new releases on hold at the library now, and things that I know will be a minute before I get them. Hello, Gremlin. Are you gonna come on camera? I don't think she is. So I'm not using the library super much, just kind of like for very specific things. And okay, you can't demand my attention while I'm trying to film. You're so bad. I picked up, what is this even called? Before She Disappeared by Lisa Gardner. I know nothing about this except it's Lisa Gardner's newest release, either from 2020 or 2021. I'm not 100% certain. I'm gonna guess this year, because she usually comes out with books in like late winter, early spring of the year. Like, usually within like the first 6 months of the year. So we'll say this is her 2021 release. And it also looks like it's a standalone. Her last couple books have all been part of the D.D. Warren / Flora Dane series, and they focused on Flora Dane quite a bit. And while I did like her character a lot, I was kind of like, by the last one, I was kind of like, this character needs a break. Like, she's clearly running out of ideas to do with this character. So this is a standalone. I just read one of her standalones, The Survivors Club, that I read earlier this video. That was also a standalone, and most of what she writes is series. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to how she does a standalone now, because I don't know, it might have been a minute since she's done a standalone. I think Right Behind You was her last one. Granted, I didn't really like that one, so, you know. No, that wasn't a standalone. That was part of her FBI agent series. I just didn't really know it because I hadn't read any of those books yet. Oh well. But I will probably be reading this next. It's the 28th today? 29th. I don't know. It's near the end of April, so I will probably try to get this done by the end of April. Just, excuse me. Just so that I can, like, have it done by then, and then I can return it with the project, which I still have because they're both going to be due in May. But this looks exciting. This looks fun. I am glad to be reading another Lisa Gardner book next, and then I'll probably take a break from thrillers for a minute because I've kind of gone through them lately. So yeah, fun times. Another reading update for you, probably my last one, just because this is getting like 30 minutes long at this point, and that's a little bit unnecessary. You're being kind of loud, rude one. I have been reading, well, now she's distracted me. I have still been working on Let Me Go by Helga Schneider. That is my audiobook that I've been listening to. I should finish that one tonight because I have an overnight shift, so I'll be listening to that and then probably a new audiobook. But I'm about halfway through and it's not bad. It just kind of seems like it lacks purpose. Like it kind of seems like it needs a reason to exist, you know, and it kind of just lacks that reason. Like, it's about her meeting up with her mother for literally the second time since she was 4 years old, and her mother was a guard at Auschwitz, and her mother is kind of an awful person and still is and has dementia, and she quizzes her mother on Auschwitz for a lot of the book, and it's kind of like about her mother manipulating her in this meeting and like just who her mother is as a person. And it's not bad, like there's nothing bad about it. It's just it doesn't like do anything, like it's not accomplishing anything, and it's a little bit hard to focus on because it is like there's just not a reason for this book to exist. And like it makes sense for her to write it, you know, like I can see how this would be helpful to her, but like it's not like her mother is giving her much exclusive insider information on Auschwitz. Like everything her mother says she already knew. It's just like she's kind of getting her mother to admit to it, or trying to, but also her mother has dementia, and it's kind of like, well, what's her mother lying about versus what she doesn't remember versus like, you know, I don't know. I don't love it. Like it's fine, but it's not one I would recommend because I just don't feel like it's doing anything, but it is like fine. And I finished Before She Disappeared by Lisa Gardner. This was a standalone, which was exciting because I do kind of like Lisa Gardner's standalones. And I gave it 3 stars, but I did like it better than her last book that I don't remember the title of, that I gave 3 stars. The Survivors Club. I did like it better than that one. I think it was better written and the story was more interesting. It's about this random woman who is a recovering alcoholic, and she searches for missing people. That's pretty much it. She's not a professional. She doesn't know anything. Hello, Gremlin. Can I pet you? No? Like, she has no experience. She just, like, kind of decided one day that she was gonna search for missing people, and she's started doing that. And it's just about this one random woman who gets involved, you know, like, after the fact. She's not showing up, like, 2 days after the person's disappeared, but usually, like, months later or even years, to kind of search for answers and help the family and do what she can. And I do kind of like when amateurs get involved to a degree, but it also seemed like a very extreme case where she really didn't know anything. She didn't know how to do anything. Like, she didn't even have, like, a smartphone to, like, look up information on. She did everything at the library. She's, like, half homeless. She works in a bar, you know, in whatever city she happens to go to for the missing persons case, because she travels to them. She has no personal life. It's just, like, weird, because all she does is interview people, basically. And I get the use in that, but it's also just, like, I don't know, like, a few days after she shows up, everything starts, like, breaking in the case, and I just didn't buy it, because it didn't seem like it had anything to do with her. And it's like, she's solving this case, but, like, she didn't really do anything. Like, the cops did everything. She was just kind of, like, there getting in the way and harassing people. But I did enjoy it. It was kind of an interesting story. Like, there were some weird things in it. Like, one of the characters used rickrolling in order to, like, call for help, which was odd. There were a couple of odd things, but I feel like that's just kind of Lisa Gardner. But I did have a fun time. Like, it was a fun ride, and I did enjoy it, and I do think her writing style has improved, and she's more like, her writing flows a lot better than it did in her earlier books, like The Survivors Club. Like that, the writing was like fine, you know, it functioned, but in this it does seem like she's gotten more into a flow with her style, and I liked it better for that. So I don't know, it was fine. Like, I'd recommend picking it up if you like kind of amateurs getting involved in cases, because I do think it was an interesting one for that, and it does very heavily focus on the fact that she is an amateur, like she's doing this as a hobby essentially, and that was interesting, if you know nothing else. And the thing that I've started reading now is Still Alice by Lisa Genova. This is an adult contemporary about a professor at Harvard who has Alzheimer's, and it's kind of just like from her perspective and just like how she forgets things and how she's like devolving in a way, you know. It goes through in time, so I assume as the book goes along it'll get like more fragmented and more confusing, because like I'm just at the very beginning, I'm like on chapter 2, and right now it's just like her forgetting certain words or like forgetting where she put her phone or like very basic things, and I assume it just gets worse from here. But I have heard good things about this one. Ariane from Bookzelots read this, and I believe she really enjoyed it, but that was a minute ago, so I'm not 100% certain on that. But it does sound good, and I do like it so far. I just kind of need to sit down and get into it, because I did like just today finish the first chapter. But yeah, that's what I've been reading, and I'm probably gonna close out this vlog. It's probably surpassed the 30-minute mark at this point, which is kind of unnecessary, but essentially I do kind of plan to get more into filming and doing booktubey things, probably slowly. I'm not like promising videos every week or anything at this point, but like a vlog here and there, or like maybe I'll edit one of my old videos, because I still got like a dozen old reviews and stuff that are, you know, 1.5 years, 2 years plus at this point. But I will try to get some things up and just try to like get back into the swing of things a little, because I have missed it, and I have a lot of books to haul, so I need to do that at this point. I think there's over 100 from the past like year of me not hauling anything on this channel, so that's fun. I've got 100 books to show you guys that I've acquired, mostly that I bought. I have problems, but yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Just like, if you're watching this, thank you for sticking around and not just abandoning my channel when I disappeared for 6 straight months and didn't talk to anyone. But I am trying to like contact people and not just ignore everyone in the booktube world anymore. So yeah, thank you guys for sticking around, and hopefully fingers crossed I will actually continue to be active and this won't be a one-off.